Bernice, and welcome to my podcast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. I wanted to create a podcast to remind you that skating is for everyone. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to Heidi Thibert, the current Senior Director of Coaching Development at the PSA, which is the Professional Skaters Association, if you didn't know. So sit back, grab a mug of your favorite beverage, and welcome to this episode of On the Ice with Bernice. And remember, everyone is welcome on the ice. Well, I'm just so excited to have with us today Heidi Thibert. She currently is the Director of Coaching Development at the PSA. And if you don't know what that is, that's the Professional Skating Association. And I'm just so excited to learn more about you and your life. And just thank you so much for coming on this interview.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, the first thing I just want to know, can you just give me an overview of all of the things you've done in the skating world?
Okay, well, I competed as a competitor for 10 years, age 8 to 18, and then I joined Ice Capades, and I toured for 10 years, met my husband. 5 years later, we decided to have children, still on tour, so we left the tour and came to Fort Collins, Colorado, and settled down, and I started coaching. And I coached for 30 years. And in the meantime, I went back to school and got a paralegal degree. And then I worked part-time for the PSA as their e-curriculum coordinator. And then eventually that led to a full-time position. And I was Director of Coaching Development, and then now Senior Director of Coaching Development for the PSA.
Oh, how lovely. That's just a life full of skating and all different avenues of the skating world. That's awesome. Now, so when you were a competitive skater, tell me more about that. Now, were you doing triple axels and triple double flips?
No. I skated in the era of Dorothy. I took from the same coaches as Dorothy Hamill and John Curry, and Dorothy was, I think, the last Olympic champion to win without a triple jump. So while we did them, I did not do them in competition. That I was not doing triple axels. So, yeah.
So what was your training like when you were a competitive skater? Did you focus a lot on jumps and spinning, or did you spend more time working on artistry?
Well, that was in the days of figures. So we spent at least half of our time doing figures, going around in circles. So, now when someone would take 4 freestyle sessions a day, for us, that would be 2 patches, 2 45-minute patches and 2 45-minute free skates. That's all we would, that's how our training went.
Oh, wow. And for those people listening who don't know a lot about figures, what was it like to just skate on a session where you skated in circles?
Well, it was very, very quiet. And the ice would be clean when we went out, and the ice was divided into 20, what we called patches. And each skater was assigned to a certain patch of ice, and that was where you practiced your school figures. And it was, very quiet, very peaceful. Only you could hear were the sounds of the blades on the ice making the turns or ripping the loops, or sometimes you could hear coaches just sort of talking to their athletes, but they would be on the patch with us, so they were just talking right next to us. So you couldn't really hear very much. It was very quiet.
Wow, that sounds serene. I don't know any skater today who has had an experience like that. Wow. So after your competitive skating years, you went on to the Ice Capades, and you stayed there for 10 years. You
I
must have
loved
loved it.
I loved every minute of it. So originally I joined with my older sister Kitty, and we did a sister shadow pair. And we toured for 3 years as a principal act. And then she decided to go back to college, and I didn't want to leave Ice Capades. I loved it so much. So I went back, and then that very same year, my husband joined as a skater, and we started dating, and then he skated for 2 years on tour. Then he left, and I wasn't about to leave. We weren't married at that point or anything, so I was like, well, bye. And so then he went to LA to teach at the Ice Capades Chalet there with John Nix, who was one of his former coaches. Did not like LA, loved to be better. So he came back on tour as a lighting director and eventually the assistant manager. So then we got married and we toured for 5 more years, and then we left to have children.
Oh my goodness. What were some good memories you have of doing Ice Capades?
Well, I was Smurfette.
Oh my goodness. What was it like to be Smurfette?
It was so fun. Well, you're not allowed to speak because you can't speak the voice of Smurfette. Remember, she had that kind of hoarse voice a little bit. So you weren't allowed to speak. But you have the big head on, and, the hoop, that made you look round and blue. It was just really fun. I mean, it was, you had 100 Smurfs and you were the only female Smurf. So, that was fun. I got to fly. I was a flyer in Ice Capades, not just the Smurfette flyer, but I also did acrobatic flying.
Oh my, how do you even learn how to do that on ice?
Well, that's a funny story because they had the flyers originally, the 4 flyers that did like the butterfly, and they picked the tallest girls, the showgirls, to do that, which I'm 5'3", so I'm not a showgirl by any means. But then they added the center flyer, and the center flyer ended up doing a lot more acrobatic turns and things. So one day they were just teaching, not even teaching, I guess we were auditioning, and I had never flown before. I didn't know how, but I was like so determined I was going to get to do it. So I faked it. So I pretended I knew what I was doing, and I just and so then I became the center flyer, and I would fly all the time. In between shows, I'd get the guy to get on the controls and fly me between shows. I couldn't get enough. It was so much more fun than just skating.
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess it's both. And I mean, I guess you're the living example. You got to fake it till you make it.
Pretty much.
Oh my goodness. Well, one last question about Ice Capades. Did you have to jump and stuff with all that stuff on, like as Smurfette?
No, we did do jumps in the Smurf costumes. Joey Purcelli, who is Papa Smurf, he was able to do a backflip.
Oh,
but I would never have tried that.
Oh, that's real talent right there. Oh my goodness. All right, so after Ice Capades, you met your husband, and then you moved to Fort Collins, Colorado. Now, did you live there before Ice Capades? Why Fort Collins, Colorado?
Well, I was born and raised in Denver, and my whole family is in Denver. And we decided, and Paul's whole family is on the East Coast in Massachusetts. So we decided when we were looking for places to settle down and, get a job coaching, that we wanted to be near one of the families. And so there was a new rink being built in Fort Collins, Colorado at the time that we were looking. So while we were on tour, we sort of, kept an eye on it, and then did an interview. Paul did an interview, and he became the recreation supervisor in charge of ice. And it was brand new rink. We went to Fort Collins. There was no figure skating club, no figure skating program. The rink was just being built. There were no students, no parents. There was no judges. There was nothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So then what were some of the first steps you took to get all that in motion?
Well, we opened in February of 1986, And I was about 4 months pregnant. And so we opened the rink, did all the learn to skate classes, and new rink in a town where there wasn't a rink. We had so many people that wanted to come skating. So that was great. So that's usually the hard part. So that part was kind of done for us. We really can't take credit for that. And then one by one, you get a few students here and a few students there. And my son was born in June of '87, and we had a Christmas show in December of 1987. And we only had enough students. Everybody who was a private lesson student got a solo. And then they were in 2 or 3 more numbers. And so I ended up having to skate 2 numbers so that the skaters could change their costumes. And Paul did the lighting, and we got, there were people in the city who knew how to, edit the music and all of that sort of thing. So we we called it Winter Wishes Annual Ice Show. And so for 25 years, I was the artistic director of the Winter Wishes Ice Show. Loved that.
Oh, how lovely.
So that was one of the first steps. And then, both of us were competitive skaters, both Paul and I. So we just got to work with the students, and within 5 years, and still had figures in those days. So within 5 years, we had a student at the sectionals. And within 9 years, we had a student at nationals, and then went on to, they were international competitors, on level, So it was, we had 2 children, both skated a little bit. Lan skated a little bit. Katrina skated a lot. She was a pair skater to the junior national level. Neither one of them loved skating the way that Paul and I did, but Lance is an attorney now, and Katrina's an esthetician. She did go to Disney on Ice, though. So. Oh
my goodness. Well, I think it'd be hard to find someone who loves skating more than you. It's you have devoted your whole life to it. It's so awesome to see. Well, that's absolutely lovely. So when did you go to get your paralegal degree?
I don't remember what year it was. I just was, at the pinnacle of my coaching career with lots of students. And, you can't teach everyone, and you don't want to teach everyone. And sometimes you don't teach someone and their parents get a little upset with you. So that part was hard. My parents weren't skating parents. They were super supportive of my coaches. And that was the hardest thing for me to understand, how skating parents could be so difficult. And so I came home from a competition, and Paul said, well, let's go over to this college and let's see if you're interested in a program. So I ended up enrolling in the paralegal program. I loved it so much, graduated top of my class. And I really thought that I would give up coaching and work in a law office.
Oh, wow.
I ended up being court clerk for a court administrator, I guess. It was a tiny town just east of Fort Collins, and for 2 years. And during that time, I was doing secondary coaching because once I decided to go back to school, I gave up all my students, and I gave them, and I just did secondary coaching, which I have to tell you was a wonderful experience to be a secondary coach, because you're supporting everybody. You don't have to worry about so much, but you can really just be supportive. And that's ultimately, that's the most fulfilling thing anyway. So during that time, I was on the coaches committee at US Figure Skating as a member of the PSA. I had 3 master ratings, and there was a ballot that went out for the coaches committee that asked about, do you support mandatory coaching education requirements for all coaches? And I voted no.
Now, why did you vote no?
Because that's all they wanted to know, but I wanted to know more. So I voted no, and then in the comment section of the ballot, I put in, I definitely support mandatory continuing education requirements for coaches. However, I need to know the answers to these questions. So I had about 12 questions about what the curriculum would be and who would decide it and what would it cover and how would they track it, like just all of the details. And I think those ballots are supposed to be anonymous, but somehow they figured out it was me.
Oh, no.
And then they appointed me as a task force chair. So I was the chair of the task force that did the design of what now is called the CERs, the continuing education requirements. So we went through all the stuff to get that passed through governing council, got passed through governing council, and all of a sudden the PSA needed to deliver this e-learning. And they didn't have anybody to do it. And so, I don't know, I was talking to somebody in the office at the PSA, and I said, oh, well, that would be cool to do, but I'm not moving to Minnesota because that's where the PSA office is. And so, oh, well, you should apply. You could work remotely. And I'm like, okay. So I applied and I got the job, and I did that for 10 years, along with other things. I was also the U.S. figure skating liaison between the two offices. I still sort of am that. And then in 2016, there needed to be someone from the PSA in the U.S. figure skating office, physically in the office. Little did we know that COVID was coming. So I talked to Paul, and we bought a condo in Colorado Springs. So I went to Colorado Springs 4 days a week, and I was here on the weekends. And he was going to retire, but then didn't retire. And year after year went by, and then COVID came in 2020. And so then I moved home, and we were kind of back and forth. And finally, I was just like, okay, well, the U.S. figure skating office is just now opening up. Just now.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that.
It's been closed for two years.
Wow.
We bought a new house in Windsor, Colorado. So we're a little bit south of Fort Collins. So I'll just go down like I used to, like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and do a bunch of meetings all at once, because now we have Zoom, so,
right.
So that's kind of how that happened.
So now, before we talk about your role in the world of coaching, what even is the PSA?
PSA stands for the Professional Skaters Association. And so there is an agreement between the U.S. Figure Skating Association and the Professional Skaters Association that the PSA is the accreditation and education arm of U.S. Figure Skating. So basically what we do is we deliver coaching education, coaching development, all of those things that U.S. Figure Skating doesn't have on their staff or in their committee work. We work with the U.S. Figure Skating Coaches Committee quite a lot, of course. So
would you say that the PSA exists to educate coaches or to educate all skaters?
Coaches.
All right. So then that makes your job even more important as what are you, the senior, oh my old brain, you're the senior director of coaching development. So tell me what you do in that job currently.
Okay, so the CERs are still under me. So every year I open up the new program for the new season. So January 1st opens new modules for all the coaches to get their compliance for the coming season.
Right, and so that means that coaches every year, if they want to be accredited, have to take this CER in order to really coach.
Yes, and it's actually not an accreditation. The CER stands for continuing education requirement. So what it is it's a piece of the coach's compliance. So they have, the safe sport training, and they have the background check and the memberships and liability insurance and all those things. The CERs is one piece of that, and it gives you coach compliance. And if you are compliant as a coach, you're able to go to the gate at a test session or a competition or whatever, and you're able to train and coach your athletes through events.
All right. Well, yeah, that's important. So you make sure that that's live and online for the coaches to go through. right?
Yep, I do that. And so US Figure Skating has athlete development camps, like Jump On It Camp and Program Component Camp and Singles High Performance Camp and Dance Camp and Pair Camp and Champs Camp and National Development Camp. So there's all these camps, right? All of them have a coach's track. So I work with US Figure Skating on developing and setting the curriculum for those coaches tracks at those athlete development camps. And that's a huge job as well. And then I have an education column in the magazine that I do. I'm trying to think of all this off the top of my head. I feel like I have a role in the ratings, because the ratings exams, if no one knows what those are, I have 3 of them back here. This is my moves in the field. This is my free skating master rating, and this is my choreography. Those are exams that the coaches take that it affirms and validates their education and their technique and their method in whatever. And there's 10 disciplines you can take them in, pairs and dance and synchro and whatever.
So could a coach still coach without doing these ratings exams?
The ratings are voluntary, yes, unless the rink or the club, if they work for the club, if the club requires, the rink requires them to have a rating, they of course would do it. But for the most part, like mine were voluntary. I just wanted to take those exams to just, go through that process and be able to say that I was a master coach. And I'm not.
It's nice. It's nice to be validated in what you're doing as well.
It is, and the ratings process is a series of exams. So you take a basic accreditation exam. There's just like basics of what you would need to know as a coach, and then you go through the sports science and medicine exams. So you do those, and then you do an initial assessment, which is just sort of for each level. So registered, certified, senior, master. I should go up this way. There's an initial assessment for each discipline in each level. And then there's a verbal exam that you take with master rated coaches asking you questions in different topic areas in the discipline that you're being examined in. And so you prepare for the exam by studying and like, figuring out what it is you do, why you do it the way you do. Well, really, what it is you do, how do you do it, and why do you do it the way you do it? And so you prepare for your exams, and through that process, it really sharpens your focus as a coach, and it really helps you understand those 3 things. What am I doing? How am I doing it? And why am I doing it this way?
Right. That's very interesting. I before this, I haven't really known too much of what it takes to be a coach. So this is really fascinating. So you also develop resources for coaches, don't you?
Yeah, yes. The USOPC, which is the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, they have a coaching education department, and they have certain programs that coaches can enroll in with recommendations and application put in through the PSA and US Figure Skating High Performance Department. So I handle those with Mitch Moyer and Justin Dillon. And so one is the Coach Accelerator Program. It's called the CAP. And I don't know how many of our coaches in the last 5 years have been through the CAP. I mean, it's over 50 probably. We brought the CAP to our PSA Summit. So we had we have the elite coaches track, the general track. So, the masses, and then the elite track. Those are ISU championship coaches. So that's Olympic, Worlds, Junior Worlds, 4 continents, all those sorts of things. Grand Prix final. Those coaches are in the elite coaches track. And then we had a high performance track, which was basically the CAP program from the USOPC that was designed specifically for figure skating coaches. And so I was allowed to have about 20. The first year I had 20 in, and the next year I begged for 25. And the next year I begged for 30. And now we sort of have them all together, like, because the third year, I think it was, ended up being the virtual year. It was either the third year or the fourth year. But so it was much easier to get a lot more people in, right? So then now we kind of have them all together because this is the beginning of a new quad. So we're kind of like trying to open up that elite coaches track to as many people as we can. We're, for the first time ever, we invited the elite synchro coaches. So we'll have about 10 of those. So that's really exciting. And, you never know who's going to come because it's not mandatory. So you have to wait for the championship coaches to say if they're coming or not and open up spots or, take spots up and, but so that's a program for resources.
And so that's just a place where you can really learn from the best in the sport.
Right. The USOPC has some wonderful, wonderful people that are there right now. Our curriculum at the summit will include the USOPC Apollo team, which is they've worked with us for over a year now. I think they finished their quad with US ski and snowboard and some other sports. And they come in and they watch the coaches at events and they talk to us and they talk to them and they have sessions, and they've really talked a lot about teamwork and talked about resilience and talked about preparation and planning. And it's a highly interactive session. And then at the same time, because it's important that all the coaches have access, we've also provided sessions with those same people that are in the elite track, that are presenting in the elite track. We have them do presentation or two in the general track so that group of coaches can also see what it is that the USOPC is bringing. It's just, you're going to talk about different things with a world level coach than you would a novice level coach,
right?
Because their needs are different. Then there's other programs like the National Team Development, it's called the National Coach Leadership Education Program. And that's with the USOPC. We've had 6 or 7 of our top coaches go through that. They have to do an interview and apply and everything. So it's all kinds of little things like that I do. I don't know if they're little, but
no, I don't think they don't sound little to me. They sound quite big and quite important as well, because you're coaching the coaches.
One of my favorite projects that I've worked on for several years now, it's the ISU. For people who don't know, that's the International Skating Union. So there was something or other passed at that level at the ISU that created money to produce a ISU global coaching education framework. And so all the countries were invited to send someone. So I was sent on behalf of US Figure Skating and PSA. And, it's people from Japan and Russia and China wasn't there. I don't think they came. Denmark, Canada, France, Italy, just everywhere. We're on this review group. And then, you get on, like my calls were like at 5 o'clock in the morning because of Asia, right? So we did that, then we started to put together this framework. And I guess I sent in a lot of stuff because then they put me on the working group. Which was wonderful for me because we started at the very bottom and we built this framework. We built 5 levels of what would be a curriculum. And now the PSA was able to deliver the level 1 curriculum, and Skate Canada is delivering level 2. And we're just still working on level 3, but PSA will be providing the content for level 3. I don't know what we're doing for 4 and 5. I can't think about that yet.
Well, that's in the future. That's 4 and 5. You got to get the first 3 sorted first.
And this is really cool because on those Zoom calls, you see coaches from Malaysia and Thailand and New Zealand and South Africa and Finland, and just everywhere, Ireland, and even the US. I mean, and some of our US coaches, Patrick O'Neill and Carrie T. Kellerberg, and Jackie Brenner at first, we were all providing this in the pilot program. And then Patrick and Carrie, they narrowed it down to from the 4 of us to 2, and really cranked those out. And they're just doing such a great job delivering that curriculum. So this is the 3rd time that the ISU has provided the level 1. We piloted it here in the US under Foundations of Coaching. So the PSA does provide the same education under Foundations of Coaching is the name we gave it. They call it level 1, but it's the same thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Just on an international scale.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So some things had to be changed. Cool. Yeah, a few things had to be changed. We had to spell things differently. Wow. So it was global, but that is really exciting, because to bring coaching education to countries that don't have mentors, and I mean, the US, we're lucky. We have lots and lots and lots of really good coaches. And I mean, of course, better coaches make better athletes. So the idea behind the ISU Global Education Framework is to bring this education in an affordable, accessible way to the countries that don't have them, and then also opening it up to the countries that do, that would like to be part of it.
Oh my goodness, how lovely. I that's just so awesome to hear, that not only are we making that available to our people in the States, but also just including everybody in that. So if people want to access these resources, where do they go?
Well, the ISU, you can go to the ISU webpage, so isu.org, and you can poke around in there. I don't know the exact pathway, but you can poke around in there and find educational resources. And they have lots. They have lots of videos. They have some Brian Orser videos. They have a lot on the rules and different things. This is called the level 1, and you can find it. You probably could search for it. And they just, when they open it up, you just send your application in, and I don't know, somebody on the other side of cyberspace decides who gets in and who doesn't. But they plan to continually offer this. So that is through that. If you want to come to the summit, coaches just need to go to the PSA website and look for the PSA 2022 summit. And then once you find that page, you can register. And I think the early bird deadline is coming up. So if you're going to come, you should register soon because I think the price goes up. I'm not sure what the deadline, the early bird deadline is, but that's coming. CER is there for everybody. You don't even need to be a PSA member to access the CERs. You just go in and get access through the PSA website. You just click on CERs. The USOPC stuff, that usually come from list of coaches from the previous season. So we just have a brand new big list of coaches, and we go through them and kind of try to match them up with different programs and ask them if they want to come and be a part of it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We just sort of work our way down the list. I'll see how those are actually offered in the coming months, because with COVID, I'm not sure exactly how they're doing that. So right. Some of it may be virtual. So
yeah. Everything's different now after and during this whole COVID stuff. Yep. Oh. But I guess my last question I have for you is, who do you think that I should interview next?
Oh, what are you looking for?
Well, is there anyone who pops in your mind? Anyone in the world of skating?
So, like you're talking about, it could be an athlete, it could be a parent.
It could be anyone. Everyone is welcome on the ice.
Have you thought of Kelly Rippon?
I have not.
Adam Rippon's mom. She's a very good speaker, and she has a book out. I'll be honest, I can't remember the name of the book, but she has some really good advice for coaches and some really good advice for parents, and maybe for athletes. I
Well,
could find her email address and send it to you.
that would be lovely. I would love to interview her. That would be absolutely awesome. Well, Heidi, it was just so lovely to get to talk to you today and learn more about the world of coaching and just your awesome life in the world of skating. And thank you so much for all you do for all the coaches out there. And I just wish you the best.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so grateful and so lucky to be able to do what I do. I mean, like I said, there's lots of really good coaches out there that coach all the athletes, but I'm one of the only people in my sport that gets to really help coaches. So I feel very, very grateful for that.
Well, I'm sure that coaches out there are grateful for you too. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me.
All right. Bye now.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of On the Ice with Bernice. On today's episode, we got to talk to Heidi Thibert about the love that she has for skating, some cool things the PSA is doing, and we got to find out exactly what a senior director of coaching development does. Would you do me a favor? Would you subscribe to my podcast, or maybe even share it with a friend? Or if you're feeling really generous, would you share an episode on Instagram or Facebook? This really helps podcasts like me get going. This episode was researched and produced by Anna Blankenship and hosted by me, Bernice. And remember, everyone is welcome on the ice.